And that was my comment in the last podcast that got some reaction. Is I said, there's two customers, the owner and the insurance. They're paying the bill, and somebody reached out and said, It's not right, Lenny. The vehicle owner is the customer, and the
Yeah.
responsibility of the insurance to pay for the bill." And again, my reply was, indeed, I was raised up in the DRP world to believe that it was possible for us to, hang out in that area. And obviously, a lot of what we've talked about and a lot of things you see in the past 10, 15 years is questioning that. Unfortunately, down to the almighty dollar and things that we're,
Yeah.
trying to talk about, like proper repair procedures and proper processes and things we're not supposed to talk about, like shop rates and collusion and all that crap. Like, at the end of the day, we need to fix cars. At the end of the day, we need to
Hmm.
be profitable. At the end of the day, um, we're aiming to attract people, shops that want to do that. Um, but again, if we can't get clear on what the role of each of us plays, i.e., customer, shop, insurance, even vendor, we had that come up last podcast.
Hmm.
Um, what's the point?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I agree.
with that, we promised our listeners that from the autopsy of a bad repair, which was an absolute blast to do,
Hmm.
sad as it was to report that there was a car that got through right to the customer and eventually written off, made this fear arise of what else is getting out of our shops. So today we really want to make sure we stay focused on offering some awareness and tangible solutions that shops can think about, talk about, and use. And I love that I have Norm St. Claude, Joel JD Collision, and Todd at Prestige, as well as myself here at KaizenHub, to reach out at any time on anything that we're presenting. And I'll do my best to link any items that you guys mention. These are all pieces of information we're happy to share with listeners. So, with that, the first thing I wanted us to talk about was just educating our customer. And I'll use the analogy that we did a lot of work to help our front office staff know that the person walking through that door, who tended to ask for that, I need an estimate. They don't actually need an estimate. What they need is their car fixed. This is somebody who was on their way to work after maybe a long weekend, having fun, or unfortunately having to deal with some personal pressure. They maybe had a stressful morning getting the kids off to school. They're driving and suddenly they get rear-ended. And now they've got to go through this whole turmoil of a car repair. Not to mention, as we know, the length it takes to get a car fixed, and now we have to break that all to them on a Monday morning. So, what are you guys doing? And Joel, you had reached out and said, "Hey, I'd really like to talk about this." What are we doing to educate the customer right from first call, uh, including what to do in an accident, what to expect when they walk through your door for a repair?
Well, first and foremost, I think the best part is to just talk to the customer and see where they're at, how they feel, and what their needs actually are. And for us, that starts with our front end girls that are killing it every day by asking all of the pertinent questions up front. So we have some check-in sheets that the customer is invited to go through with the CSRs up front, and we gather all the insurance information, the vehicle damage information, and try to get quite detailed on the vehicle damage, like were airbags deployed, are there any fluids leaking, the hood latching, and many more that sometimes seem like they're kind of a waste of time, but when they aren't asked, that's when you truly do waste time. We've all had the wheel lock not show up when we're taking the car apart. Man, that sure makes a estimate go real smooth right off the bat. You got three people making phone calls, chasing around. Do we have that one?
Yeah.
Right. So getting all those questions asked right off of the bat is supremely important so that we can triage the job and assign the right amount of time for a proper repair plan or In our case, sometimes we just do what we call an OPP, and it's an opportunity for parts. And we don't do a full estimate, but we make sure we gather all parts that would be necessary for the job.
Awesome.
And then we can finalize the estimate after that, going through all the repair procedures and all that fun stuff. So yeah, vehicle check-in has been very good for us.
Yeah, and so let me get right back to the check-in. But you mentioned something called OPP. I got the song in my head right now, but we called it X-ray back in the concourse days. Prestige, I believe, calls it X-ray.
I can't hear you, Lenny.
That was me. Okay. OPP, right? Prestige calls it X-ray. We called it X-ray. Norm, do you have a term for pre-dismantling?
Anyways, yeah, there's a number of acronyms that are used across the trade. Advanced repair planning. So it's. But I think they're all with the same intent to capture as much of the information up front as we can, so that when the car is here for repair, it's actually getting repaired. So.
Okay, and again,
so the question
I have, you
have,
are doing that as well. That practice.
Yeah, we do that as well. Yep.
Okay. Sorry, Todd.
So the question I have is if if we're talking to shop owners about best practices, who is not doing this and succeeding? I'd love to hear from them. Like, it seems like this is just it's a fairly universal thing now, but we still have owners, customers coming in all the time being like, yeah, the other shop just wasn't going to do this. And what are the effects of this, doing advanced repair plans and stuff?
Right. And by this, you mean, again, bringing the car in on appointment, anywhere from while the customer waits to leaving it for the day. And the sole purpose is to get into that car to establish a 100% parts list, knowing exactly what we need for parts so that when the car comes in for repair, we have everything we need and we don't have to wait on parts. Your question was, are there any shops out there that are not doing that whatsoever and actually succeeding?
Yeah, I'd love to hear about it, because I just can't see my way around it. But I know that there's lots of shops out there not doing it. So what's happening out there in the industry?
Well, the status quo is the way I would look at it. It's the way we've always been doing it, right? And to make that commitment, as you know, for you guys, it wasn't like obvious right off the bat that this was going to work. You still had your skepticism about moving forward until you did it, and then it's like, okay, yeah, we're done. We should have done this a long time ago.
We should have done this a long time ago.
But fear of change, I think, is the biggest factor that keeps people from making the proper steps forward.
Right.
Yeah, I think so too. But I think as this whole thing has evolved, shops have also been getting a lot better at triage and identifying that some of them just won't qualify. Like we've had some where, the customers stated that, oh no, is it still drivable? We go through all the questions, and then you see a picture of this thing. It's like, no, the answer is no. This car is not drivable for your safety and everybody else.
Oh, you mean it's still on four wheels? Yes.
It's still on four wheels. So if you can't capture all the damage, then is it worth following that approach, or do you treat it like a tow-in? Or I'm not pretending that I know the answer or have a definite, advice for anyone. But what I'm starting to see with shops around me as we're talking about this is shops are starting to drill down a little bit further into how they're doing this and which ones and adding some qualifiers. And the other thing that we just did is we've always tried to pull in some of our techs to help, but that's been kind of ad hoc a little bit. Now we've just made it a pre-requirement that there's going to be a technician with my estimator every single time, because my estimator was a technician before, so he was often tackling that himself. But in order to keep things on track and to capture everything in the shortest amount of time, I think it's essential to have both.
So, Norm, fantastic segue off of the terms of X-ray, advanced repair planning, OPP, in JD's case. and then you just said the word triage. So, Joel, we were at Prestige a month and a bit ago, and we actually stole your check-in sheet, just so you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
It's
Todd,
fantastic. Love to share.
with your
I didn't know that.
it,
Thank you, Joel.
yeah, so
Appreciate that.
can we
We made it our own, but yes, yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
can I share that, Todd?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is a up to
You know what
date.
can I give context as to why I'm cool with this?
Sure.
I think that the more the industry uptakes the idea of doing this, the more it normalizes it for customers seeking a shop to do repairs for them. And I think that because at times, not all the time, but at times a customer feels like answering all of these questions is just actually inconvenient. Like, why do you need to know so many things? What's going on? Like, why do you need all this info? And I think the more shops do it, the more it becomes like a normal thing. Yeah, okay, this makes sense. Maybe they did it a little different, but it makes sense because all shops are sort of requiring this whole like, here, take your keys and drop your car and don't say a word. Like, we need to sort of get rid of that mentality.
Yeah. Back to your question, what shops are not doing check-ins that are actually surviving?
Yeah.
The triage approach ultimately is what you see here. A lot of thought, and anytime that we do go into a shop that has, I guess, that has a real some degree of a check-in process. Unfortunately, often it differs between people at the desk. It's sometimes in a steno pad or sticky note. A lot of times it's a senior person who's just done it so long and they know and they do well. But we start somebody new at the front desk and they're not following the same thing. So we always go in very cautiously instead of just saying, hey, take this and follow it, because that's not how you create buy-in. What we did in Prestige's case is we took JD's check-in that they have over the years tuned, and we said, here's an example of what it could look like, but now let's have the conversation. So we did, right? Todd, we met with your front staff, and man, did they hash it out. They put me through the ringer for like 3 hours of this is what it's got to say, this is what I do, and we ripped this thing in half and quarters and eighths, and then we put it back into place. But what they managed to pull off was the triage approach. All of the questions we need to ask in the right order to get us an understanding of this vehicle, who we're dealing with, how it's being paid. In the case of provincial, I understand ICBC, and maybe it's true in Manitoba norm. If a hit and run happens, it's a completely different classification.
I wouldn't say completely different, but it is important to know.
Like a big red flag, anyways. Like in BC, I understand it constitutes a totally different process. So that's
okay.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
it
a big question.
Completely does. Yep.
Already the question, what are they going to need to think about with a replacement vehicle? That's one of the key questions people are thinking of when their car gets wrecked. They're not thinking like, is my paint going to match? not most anyways. They're like, what am I going to do with my car? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Customer info, what's the best way to get a hold of you? And then the awesome safety questions like, again, where your airbags deployed. We have had customers drive in, and we used to, like, back in the day, we'd ask, is your car drivable? Like, yeah, it drives. Okay, come on down. And the airbag was duct taped to the steering wheel. We never asked.
That.
We never asked. We never said, did your airbags deploy? So that's why that question's there. Leaking any fluids? Is the hood not latching? Any of these questions end up being answered no. It's a fail. It's no longer a drivable. Sorry.
Yes. Anything answering yes. It's like,
and it helps the front personnel flag this vehicle to the best of their ability by asking the right question.
Yeah.
So, Joel, if it's any help, then or maybe all of you first, is the job classification was another one. By rights, the questions being asked will also, Norm, to your point, help us kind of differentiate whether this thing might qualify or not. Because yes, if it's a train wreck or a major hit and it's not drivable, we're not going to do an advanced repair plan on it. But indeed, if it's a scrape to the left side doors in a parking lot, we might. Correct?
Yep.
So Joel, I'll scroll down further, but you had alluded to it. The other questions that shops should be asking.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of this, I'm sure, seems familiar to you. The questions on here.
Oh yeah.
the ones that Prestige stole.
Okay.
Definitely.
Feel away, because I agree with what Todd said earlier. The more that everybody is doing this, then a new status quo is established. So I'm actually going to look at this closer and make sure I don't want to change mine.
Totally, totally. And Lenny, I love your approach with our team. Ask the questions. Do you see value in knowing the answer to these questions?
Yep.
And the interesting thing is that shop technicians can't diagnose a car if they don't know what happened to it. They truly, you can look at damage on a bumper and think, oh yeah, like cool, they hit a post. Yeah, you don't realize they went through a field before they hit that post, right? Like there's just so many variables. Oh, I didn't know I needed to look under the car.
Yeah.
Like, of course you didn't.
Yeah. Well,
I remember as a technician literally looking at the car when it first gets in my stall and going, oh yeah, this is where it hit. I better follow in on that line and see if there's any damage that is transferred. And
yeah,
what a waste of time.
What a waste of time.
Well, and to Todd's point, not only did we have the CSRs involved in this, we brought technicians in too and asked them, right? Is there value in asking if you have wheel locks? I mean, it's a yes. Anything in the trunk or box, including that shifted and or needs to be removed so we can work on that vehicle. Right? How frustrating
that's got to be the furthest one for the technicians.
How frustrating is it to open a trunk and it literally chock full of books and magazines, and now you got to empty that, right? So, Todd, I wish we could have brought Mark in on this this topic, because he had observed when you guys implemented within a couple weeks the check-in sheet.
Yeah.
Do you recall that story enough to?
I can sort of summarize it, Mark. I heard part of the conversation in passing, but ultimately we had a brand new person, green bean, on the front desk, less than 2 weeks on staff. So you're talking somebody that is just getting trained and does not have a clue. He's a great young person, with definitely an eye for customer service. But this sheet was created before he started, and we were running it when he started. And he ran, so we fixed these miserable things called Tesla Model S's at times. And they are, especially the first gen cars, cause us unbelievable headaches. They are just a challenge to repair. Lots of things don't work. I don't want to go into all the details, but basically what he did is we had a remote customer, because they drove 2.5 hours to have their vehicle repaired at our shop. We had never seen this car in person. We had only seen photos. So the customer is dropping the car off, and he runs her through this sheet, top to bottom. And not only did he run through it like a pro, like she wouldn't have known he was new. Like in her mind, this young guy is a seasoned vet, and he had her telling him things about that car that we would never have known. Oh, this doesn't work, and sometimes the headlights flicker, and the door handle on the right rear doesn't open properly, and and it was like the list was huge. So she felt well taken care of, because he actually got her to think about how her car works or doesn't work, got to go in depth as to what happened, how the accident happened, did you hit a curb, all the little things, and ultimately set us up for potentially a couple wins, because now we knew what was wrong with this thing that was not related to the incident she was having fixed. We're always like, as a body shop, is there things that we can do when we're repairing a car to really impact her? Yeah, you bet we can. And maybe not, but at least we've got that chance. And I got to tell you, we have wasted days of technicians' time trying to troubleshoot problems on the older versions of these cars. And they're like, if you don't know that it happened in advance, it's your fault, right? Like if that headlight doesn't work, like it's your fault. you're the last one to touch that car. And now knowing that we don't have to chase these problems, yeah, it's a huge win. And I mean, Mark heard the whole story, but he was just like, you can't believe it. This is unbelievable.
Very cool. I love those stories. And for honoring Joel's hopes that people steal this, we'll add a link to a copy of one.
Yeah, sure.
Kind of a scrubbed one without company name on it that somebody can look at. Again, highly recommend you don't just run downstairs and implement it in your front office. You meet with your people, you meet with your techs, you talk about the challenges currently going on in your business, and then you talk about would there be value. That's how you create buy-in. So,
yep,
awesome stuff. And again, super stoked that you guys are open to sharing amongst each other these things. We joke about Prestige stealing it, Joel, but I know you in a heartbeat. There, so.
Well, Joel stole it from me, so I mean,
I did not.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And I probably stole it from Walter and Annette at High Caliber. I mean, it just
totally. Totally. Yeah. That is the way.
Caring is caring, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Clear is kind.
Absolutely. I was going to spend a little bit of time touching base on how to deal with situations like third party. I guess the comment I would add to that is the frustration of, dealing with somebody outside of insurance. Same along the lines as your customer pays. You can still use the check-in sheet to guide all of those conversations. In a third-party situation, I don't think it's any different in any province that somebody who has hit, or what we call the hitter, dealing with the hittee, the person who's been hit often, we just ultimately said, hey, as good of intention as the third party that hit you may have, it's why you have insurance and utilize them. I know that in Alberta, there's a tricky part of if you don't have collision coverage and you get hit, you're at a bit of the mercy of the person you ran into, and that's not cool. But the reality is we can still educate customers right off the hop on the situation they're in. And where I'm going with this is to not forget that doing the estimate and or the initial inspection of parts required is a very important part, but do not start there. Have a conversation with these people. Understand their lives have been ripped apart in some cases, and meet them where they're at when they first walk in. Really encourage your staff to develop that relationship. And here's a great example. We also had to educate our staff whether we fix rust. So we had a customer call and say, do you fix rust? And our answer was no, we don't fix rust. And business owner gets a call. This was a buddy of his. It says, yeah, I got a chip on the hood of my Porsche and it's rusting, but your shop says that won't fix it.
Right.
Well, we assumed that the customer knew they were talking about when it comes to rust. We flat out said we don't do rust. And that was just a really, I'd say, cool experience for us as a business to realize we got to be real careful about how we're interpreting customers' questions and inquiries. So I just wanted to throw that in there. And again, any of us are available to reach out if somebody has more needs more help in that area. So I think there is value, guys. Again, perhaps any one of you want to jump in on the whole conversation about the ARP, OPP, X-ray, advanced repair planning topic. I'll start you off with, there was a time where people saw that as a waste of time to bring the car in while the customer waited and determine 100% parts order. Is that a waste of time nowadays or not?
No, definitely not a waste of time, but it's very important though that they are triaged properly, like you said earlier, with those train wrecks versus the small job versus the medium and the heavy. One has to have a great understanding of what you're getting into, because time tends to be the enemy in these repair plans, and it is not always communicated very clearly. And I'm talking about time, I'm talking about the technician's time and what's expected of them. The customer's time, are they waiting? Are they dropping off? What is the expectation? Because if you let's say you set off a 2 hour block for this repair plan, and you get it in there, and you're like, well, no, this is a full day disassembly to find all of the damage. You're behind the eight ball once
Yeah.
again because your triage and your vehicle check-in probably didn't get to the root of all the answers so that you could prepare properly. So
Yeah.
it can't be it's 2 hours and you get it done in 2 hours and you're done. No, it's when everything is found is the biggest thing that we're after. So time expectations for all people involved in that process need to be very, very clear.
Yeah, and there's layer, you mentioned job severity, and I think that that's a thing, but I also think job complexity, as you allude to, these are all considerations. Like triage ultimately sets the pace, and I mean we'll go to the extent to get photos if we can. If somebody's called, it's like, hey, can you like snap me a photo? Let's see what we're dealing with here, and use your team to make good decisions. But for example, if somebody's got a pickup truck with a steel bumper that's tacoed, like you're not getting that back on if you take it off, right? So
Yeah.
your team needs to make good decisions, and maybe they do want to take a closer look at that truck, pull a shield from underneath, or whatever they want to do to set themselves up for success. But ultimately, it isn't um, it isn't probably going to get taken apart the way that we would another vehicle. And for us, like you get an S-Class Mercedes, that's an 8.5 hour re and re on that front bumper. Okay, that's one panel. Like what, who's making these decisions? And really, if you're inconveniencing an owner, let's make sure that we're doing it intelligently and that we're meeting some sort of specific benefit to them, to the payer in the situation, to the shop. Like it's like a win-win-win or no deal.
I love that you mentioned that. That brings me back to the years when 15, 20 years ago, we were playing with this idea of bringing the car in while the customer waits, and we had some kickback. Technicians, office staff, customers sometimes as well. But we had to remind ourselves that we were already inconveniencing the customer by bringing their car in, dismantling it, and putting it outside, waiting for months for a part.
It's a different kind of inconvenience.
So
Mhm.
yes, you're right. This is not designed to inconvenience the customer. It's designed to create the conversation ahead of time with the customer, saying there's more to it than your outside bumper cover. I love the new term tacoed.
You like that?
Yeah.
It's not Taco Tuesday, but
Yeah, but there are components underneath this bumper cover that have taken the impact, and if we don't take time now to look at those, we're gonna be bringing your car in on the day of repair to do so, and have to wait regardless. So that the whole premise of pre or advanced repair planning a car came from the realization of all those cars sitting out in your lot, waiting on parts that we otherwise could have gotten if we had only asked. Right?
yeah, that's exactly right.
Let's next stage talk about repair planning, and this is again sparked from the conversation from the last podcast, the autopsy of a bad repair. If whoever's listening has not listened to that one or watched it, please do, because the next piece we're going to get into is why repair planning is crucial to the success, and why it all comes back to repair planning every time. So to help guide the conversation, I'm gonna flip a picture up here of our man Joel out at a location helping out a tech, and our guy Ryan.
Oh, I really hope it's the picture you showed our team.
Yeah, and
So good.
there's so much good going on in this photo.
Oh, I love this photo.
And I'm sorry I can't get a full screen shot, but what you're basically seeing is a boot camp happening and a full session with a young but experienced technician, really getting into the explanation of repair planning. So, Joel, if it's okay with you, you want to tell everyone what's going on in this picture?
Well, we went down for a day. I went out to help out Lenny and some I wouldn't call them competitors. I'd call them body shop owners that love doing things the right way. And so we were invited to go back and work, and I decided, and with Lenny's prodding a little bit, to get in there, not just to talk about it, but to go work with the technician. And it was a lot of fun. Uh, Got some looks from him a little bit, like, you know what you're doing, dude? You still know how to
Yeah,
pop
like who are you?
yeah,
Yeah.
popping off the interior trim on a hatch. We all know can be tricky at times. One of the easiest places to break clips on the trim panel,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I nailed it. Didn't break any.
Nice work.
But then we got to bagging and tagging. We were using cups there for the materials, but they were marked. And it was just really, really fun to work with a technician and to, just be part of the solution for everybody, much like we're trying to do right now by sharing check-in sheets, right?
Yeah.
It's the same premise.
Yeah, I love this. And there's the old cliche, like if you haven't planned to succeed, what have you planned to do? Right? Am I going to leave this up to chance? I don't know if anybody's worked in the industry in the last couple of years, but when you leave anything up to chance, it fails.
Well, and this one here was one of those estimates that was done. And I can't remember, did this end up being a total loss?
No, not this one. The one we
But
did shortly after, which also had a not so good repair, a bad repair.
mhm,
But what was key about it is that the one that we did after this that actually made it through to repair planning. Granted, this shop definitely took serious the proper check-in, and as you mentioned, Norm, the triage up front. At least they caught it. It didn't get past the parts order. It didn't get into the shop for repair. They caught it in repair planning. But to your point, Joel, again, getting in there. And I had one person that I presented this photo to. They're like, "Really, paint cups for bolts?" I'm like, "Listen, I'm sorry." They had nothing before. They had a coffee can, right? What we're doing is we're teaching them that you got to use some sort of organization for either bagging and tagging or tackle box, but don't let best get in the way of getting better. So for this specific
Yeah, that's
job,
what I thought. I was like, that's a good innovation, and probably in a pinch when you don't have anything else, it's like we got to organize this, right? Like I think good on you. Don't
yeah.
like you're still better than you were on the last car.
Yeah, and the very next day they actually decided to go with the Ziploc approach, and where a lot of other locations used the tackle box approach. The key was they allowed the techs to talk and decide what was best. So, but I see
Yeah, love
Norm
it.
shifting in his seat. I'd love to get his input on what has repair planning done for you and your team to set the repair up for success, and perhaps you might even share one that didn't go well.
Yeah, no, I was just shifting around because I hate hearing the argument of like, oh, that container is no good. You got to use this. You got to. It's like, calm down, okay? The conversation is about having some sort of organizational method. Like I got beat down once because we use tackle boxes here. Oh, you can't use tackle boxes. It's like, no, like if you watch our last podcast, we got bigger problems as an industry than to decide what we're using to categorize our fasteners. So I hope we don't see any. Of course, someone's going to put it in the comments just to mess with me. But to your question, it's been a long journey, and I'll be very honest. When I started down my journey as a shop owner, one of continuous improvement, a knee-jerk reaction is to jump on board when you hear these new I'll call them fads. They're not really fads because a fad would imply that it's come and gone and people have moved on from it. Some of these things are here to stay. And I think you said it earlier, sometimes we focus on, oh yeah, well, we got to do this. And we grab that process and we put it in our business, and it's clunky. And of course it's clunky because it wasn't made for you. It was made for another shop. And just like the check-in sheet, these things need to be customized to your business, to your customers, and to your situation. I mean, we're in a small rural town where, customer A works at the bank. How about we go grab your vehicle and bring it in here and then we'll return it to you at the end of the day rather than have you wait around. So there's a lot of decisions that get made on the spot based on the situation, which is going to dictate how that repair planning approach is gonna work, or how is it gonna be successful. Because at the end of the day, if you can't capture all the damage, then in some sense, what's the point? And I say that because if you're going to go through the trouble of educating your customer on the process and telling them why you're taking something apart before the repair, only to call them midway through the repair and tell them you missed the part and you're waiting for parts, then you're going to look like a fool. And we've done it. That's happened to us before, right? So you got to be very careful, because you can't come off as, oh yeah, we're different than all the other shops. We get ahead of all this stuff. You know what? Nobody's perfect. No process is perfect. We're all trying to be better. But are you setting yourself up for the best result? And if you're trying to do a full day, pre-inspection in 2 hours, I'm sorry, you're not going to be successful. You're going to fail. You're going to make the process look foolish. And the next time the customer's involved, they're going to say, yeah, I tried that at the last shop. They had an OPP, ARP, whatever, and it failed miserably. So let's not do ourselves any disservices and fail when we're trying to be successful. So that's my that's what my shifting around in the chair was all about there, Lenny.
Well, I think to add to that too, you talked earlier about triage and when things become a tow-in. Well, I think we all know now, with all the safety features and headlights, that is it pushing 70-75% of vehicles are becoming pretty much tow-ins, whether they have large severity or not.
It's definitely a high number. Give you that.
I don't know what the number is, because I don't know if anybody's studied that, but that is the reality. So that is in effect a tool for us to make sure that when we are repair planning, because we have the time now, the car's not going anywhere. So you don't have any excuses. You don't have to worry about the customer waiting. You just set the block, you take it apart, you do a proper repair plan, and you're off to the races. So non-drives are kind of the friend, more so than before.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And I'll flip just open to keep conversation going about importance in repair planning is indeed having a process. Norm, you had shared that perhaps, starting with something and then allowing it. I guess what I heard you say is allow it to fail, but be there when it does. Allow your people to follow something that, even at times maybe doesn't make sense to them. Shops out there that are not successful, let alone implemented repair planning, don't need to start from scratch or reinvent the wheel. There are processes out there that they can take. I'm a big advocate of making it visual so we can have the conversation. I absolutely, and this happened at Prestige's boot camp where we laid it out and people their techs immediately started to question it. It was beautiful. I don't like that. Okay, well, what do you want? Well, I'd rather it see it this way. Like, do we take photos then scan, or do we scan then take photos? The key is we should be taking photos and we should be scanning.
Mm-hmm.
Right? By the way, should we not pre-wash the car before it comes into repair planning? Right? Are you, as a shop, pre-washing your car before it goes into repair planning?
It's like any of this stuff. I mean, I like this as a nice template. Same with the check-in sheet, but I mean, work with your team. Your team knows the pain points. They live them every day.
Right.
Empower your team, give them,
you said it.
Give them a platform to take it apart and say, you know what, I don't like that check-in sheet because we work in a different market and it doesn't work for us. But what I do think, or what we do think, is that this would actually work. And start having those conversations, because I mean, how many times as shop owners, have you heard from your technicians about a wheel lot, or a box full of garbage and nails and whatever? And it's like, let's be honest. Let's start asking these questions, right?
Absolutely. And so with that, to satisfy some people who maybe watched or hopefully watched the last podcast, the autopsy of a bad repair, what we thought maybe would raise some awareness of some things that are going on in the industry. Since seen a lot of comment and inquiry back on how do we make sure that isn't happening in our own shop. and it was pretty humbling to have shop owners reach out and say, "I need your help," because I don't necessarily think we're putting out things like that and all the time, but it's scaring me to know that we maybe aren't doing things right at the beginning. So where you see this list or diamond area of questions, these are all questions in the repair planning process that are asked before we even lay a wrench to the vehicle. It has gone through the triage process. It may or may not have gone through the advanced repair planning or x-ray process. It's been pre-washed, pre-scanned. It's entered into the repair planning bay, a dedicated space for a technician to go to and properly dismantle. But we start with these questions. And this is not just for experienced techs. These are for your young trainees as well, to say, look, to set you up for success, we're going to start by asking all of these questions before we take this thing apart. And that includes, what are we repairing? How far do we dismantle? Yeah, do we need to hoist it up? Do I need to involve other technicians? Like, is it okay for a young tech to go to a senior tech and say, can you come over and have a look at this? Because I'd like to learn more before we take it apart. Yep, check it out. That thing's got a slight sway. Let's cross measure it first and talk about what we're going to do before we take it apart. Reviewing prior related damages. Again, a lot of technology come along the way in 3D measuring. Mechanical damage. Do we need to do some pre-pulling? All data, and I apologize, there's another program out there that you guys have now.
Repair Logic?
Repair Logic. Having all that data, all that equipment at the fingertips of the tech before they dismantle, so that they can review how that trim panel comes off or what to watch for on that new Cadillac headlight. So does vehicle require recalibration? And hey, check this out. We can actually look at this car and review any additional upsells that the customer might want done while it's in. So all of that happening. Let's play some coulda, shoulda, woulda. What would have happened to that Infinity we saw that died, that maybe possibly could have been avoided if this process was followed? Just speculating.
Where do you start with that one? Let's say everything. Everything.
Well, the exhaust question would be an easy one, whether it was available or not, and what would be the process based on the answer to those two questions. We'll start there.
Right.
Yeah, that are like materials when like they're in during repair planning. It's like even something simple like, hey, we're gonna wreck the sound deadener. Like this is just so many things. What inners are we gonna paint? What's like how's this really gonna look?
Yeah, and I'm just gonna zoom in a bit here because
nice.
The key is that after all those questions are asked and we head into actually taking apart the car, the disciplines, not on some cars, but on every car. And we often get asked, like, every single time. But what if it's just a key scratch? It doesn't matter. Every single time. As you guys alluded to, and we would tell you that on the big tow-ins, $30,000+ repair, we would end up with zero supplement because we were so disciplined on the repair planning. Where we got caught was that key scratch, right? Or the light rub to the rear quarter and bumper cover. No table set out. We missed the bracket. We missed the damage below the bumper cover, and now this car went through and completely destroyed our momentum.
Yeah,
so,
you're 100% right. Yeah.
Like a couple of years ago, a customer of ours reached out to me directly because he was looking at a Porsche 911 that had been in a significant accident, and it was fixed at a very well-known shop. I won't name drop, in Vancouver, and he said, I can get you this sheet. And I said, okay, I can review it. I mean, I haven't seen the car, but I can tell you that based on the way that sheet was written and the, let's call it, lack of supplements, that this car was actually, they went to extreme lengths to repair plan this car. Extreme, way more out there than, I mean, this thing needed a rail and a tub in the front, and like it was a big job. And I told him, I said, if their repair quality aligns up to the quality of this estimate, and I believe that it will, this car is going to be like brand new. it was such a, he was like, okay, like, I can't believe you can tell that. I'm like, I don't even need to see it. I can tell that they spent so much time, way more than anybody, would think was normal. But it was a success. It was a price change cleanup S1. It was awesome, man. So, and yeah, he's had that car for years now, and loves it, problem free.
Success stories.
Yeah, right. They're out there, and there's
Mm-hmm.
shops doing it successfully. And you don't need to drive a 911 to get that kind of treatment. The average car in the average shop, there's no reason that every shop can be doing this. Like, let's get at it.
My wife loves her Sienna. So
There you go.
I do not recall who brought it up, but the importance of bringing your tech and your estimator together. Was that you, Norm?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the stage of repair planning as well, getting your people, what we call the dance. Sometimes you lead, sometimes you follow, but it's all about getting this car laid out and into that sheet properly, proper photos uploaded, proper parts order. Anything else you guys could think of that we should touch base on when it comes to the importance of repair planning before we switch gears?
Answer all the questions. That's where I'm at. Answer all the
Yeah.
questions. If you don't have any question you can ask yourself about this repair, anything, get it answered before that car moves forward.
Okay. For the sake of time, Norm, you have some great insights on the end of the repair. But before we go there was one more thing we talked about on the autopsy of bad repairs, how perhaps the QC systems failed. And I say perhaps politely. We can tell that there was very little to no QC system followed, whether there was one in place or not. Real quick, each of you share your experience with QC systems that have failed, not been followed, and or are absolutely working, just to help our listeners.
I can tell you that if you don't have a documented QC system at all, a visual QC system, it will definitely not get followed, and that I can promise. In my experience, even visual ones fail, and even with great people, we miss things because we're human. And so I think you just have to you have to you can't discount that, and you need way more checks and balances than you think.
Norm?
Yeah, I mean our goal many years ago when creating our in repair check sheets was to hopefully create something that would really downplay the necessity of a final QC check, because in theory if your QC happens throughout the repair, then it should be fairly quick by the end of it. I think there's value in getting a different set of eyes on it. That's one thing. Anybody who's been a tech fighting with something to get it to fit perfectly will undeniably just find a way to justify poor fitment in their mind, right? This is the best I can get it. And then we've all had those technicians come to us and say, "Hey, Norm, have a look at this. I know it's not perfect, but I've been on it for half an hour." A fresh set of eyes will just say, "No, you know what? That doesn't fit. It's not good enough. It's going to go." So that's we found success in that, making sure that the person doing the final QC is not the same person that put it together. And that might be completely obvious to a lot of people, but to others, or maybe in some shops, it's not possible, right? But I find that's a slight tweak where we've seen a lot of success. And having a thorough checklist throughout your repair process also gives your QC person a fighting chance at having some sort of accountability throughout the process and being able to go back through the steps and say, "Hey, this is where we fell off. Joe, you signed off on this. What happened here?" Right? So those are just a few things just to kind of add to what everybody's already said.
Okay. And Joel, anything?
No, I think the boys covered that one pretty good. I could spitball some more, but we got other things to get at too here, so
We
let's move
do,
on.
and that was another chair shifting I saw in last podcast from Norm when I was describing the frustration of a family member not getting proper updates through the repair, and then ultimately being told, yeah, it's done, you better come get it or your rental will be cut off. Norm, last podcast you showed some open frustration with the idea that the shop was not properly updating the customer, and then ultimately at the very end rushed the delivery. So I'd like you to use this opportunity to vent that frustration and why that's not okay.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've had a pet peeve with, from seeing it firsthand here. I feel like like many shops, we get really good at the start of the process, right? When the customer comes in, we're using the QC sheets, we're meeting our customer where they're at, I think is the way you put it. But then as we get to the end of the repair, it's like, here's your keys, see you later, we're done,
Yeah,
bye. And
we're
it's
done.
like, way to
Yeah.
drop the football at the 5 yard line. Yeah. So just to go over the process, I think one thing that we need to keep in mind is when we see a damaged car in our shop, we and we look at it through the lens of a repair shop or a technician. The problem is that the quarter's got a 5 hour dent in it and the bumper is broken. We look at things through that lens, but customers don't see any of that. They see, I don't have my vehicle right now. How am I going to get my kids to soccer? How am I going to get to my lunch meeting tomorrow? On and on and on. So part of those updates and part of your process needs to be about taking away that point of stress for the customer. That's ultimately why customers come to us or any other business. I read this in the SAR newsletter, so I don't want to sound overly smart here, but that's why we purchase things and services, right? It's to take a stress away. I got Buddy to fix my hot water tank because I don't want to fix the darn thing. I hate fixing hot water tanks. So yes, a collision repair is a little more, complicated than that in some senses. But at the end of the day, through those repair updates, we're allowing the customer to plan their day. We're allowing them to plan around the repair and ultimately allowing them to plan for their lives to get back to normal. So the more that we can do that, the better it is. And it's funny that we're talking about it because we just had our technician lunch meeting and we were talking about the compliments that our business gets about two things. One, our detailer does a fantastic job. And two,
That's
our CSRs do an excellent job updating our customers. And
yeah.
sometimes, someone from a technician background will look at that and say, "Hey, how about the $20,000 claim I just fixed? How about you are thankful for that?" But at the end of the day, as much as our last podcast would say otherwise, from a customer standpoint, getting a proper repair done, that's just kind of a given. It's the repair
Should be.
updates, it's the little extras, it's those little things. Exactly. Those are the things that make a customer remember why they came to you in the first place. Those are the things that they're talking about with their friends and other potential customers. So, why we're not focusing more time on that is beyond me. And that's a realization we had. So, giving the same amount of attention to the end of the process, whether that's with the updates and the follow up, as we do as the front of our process, I think is key. And the follow ups. We had a customer not long ago. She kind of chuckled when we said we were calling for a follow up. She said, "My doctor doesn't follow up with me now. My body shop's following up with me. Like, the sale is done. You have my money." And meanwhile, I'm thinking, well, I want your money next time. No,
Yeah.
but it's that's what it's about. We want to make sure.
It's true.
We want to make sure that everything is truly okay. And sometimes, you know, we ask those questions, we follow up with those customers, and it's easy to take the no news is good news approach and like, oh, don't want to stir things up. Maybe they'll find something that wasn't there. You know what? Let's just get over it. Ask the questions. Make sure they're
I
okay.
think that's it right there, Norm. That's the whole
Yeah.
purpose of follow up. I mean, to think that you're going out of your way to find something wrong versus what I think you're alluding to is don't wait for your customer to do that. Worse yet,
Yeah.
not call you back and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a guess out of experience that on that Infinity repair, at least the shop done its darndest to keep the customer informed. They probably would have worked with them at the end to sort out the mess.
Oh,
Yeah, I agree.
way better chance.
Probably. I mean, let's all pick apart Infinity. Anytime we've had a problem, and you've done everything you can to keep that customer informed, and a problem arises, like if you really want to up your game in that department, it's called a book called Raving Fans, and it talks about the fact that we all expect to go through life with no issues, like the hot water heater repair. No, the reality is we're expecting somebody to come in and fix it, and when a problem occurs, which it will, like, who's to think that you're never going to have issues in a business? I mean, the collision world was built on problems, on accidents, right? But where the book stresses is that it's what defines you is when a problem arises and how well you'll deal with it. And you have one chance to show that customer when a problem occurs what you're all about, that you are there to take care of it. And that's what keeps me going back to my hot water tank repair guy is there have been issues, and I did call them, and you know what they did? They jumped on and they took care of it. Right now, I'm a raving fan of that hot water. So, Norm, if you need a good hot water tank guy, let me know.
Yeah. And to be clear, I have
sure.
one of those as well. He's fantastic. So yeah.
So, in that, asking, how was your repair? How is your car doing? How have we done to get you through this? And being okay if they're saying, actually, I really hate to say this, but I've noticed every time it rains, there's a slight water stain on my headliner. Wow. Okay, you know what? I'm so sorry. We need to get you an ASAP because that could be a serious issue, right?
Go hunting for bad news.
Yeah, yeah. So that note, I know it doesn't replace the fear, I guess, that shop owners may have on the things that might get through their shops and to their customers. I'll leave it with this. On the sake of updating your customer, take some time, sit in your office, and just listen to the phone ringing and what your people in your front office are saying. Because if it's like, when's my car going to be ready, or what's going on with my car, you might want to take a new look at your updating system, right? If it's, hey, I've had an accident, I want to get my car booked in, are they following a proper check-in procedure, right? And then second, I guess we'll end with this. Guys, each of you have navigated the waters early on. You've gone through the storms. You've gone through the challenges of implementing repair planning. I'm sure there's lots of listeners that have. Everything we talked about makes sense. What advice do you have for them about repair, like proper repair planning, to keep moving forward?
I got this one.
All right.
You will fail, and you will get frustrated. You will wonder whether it's you, your process, whether your technicians are in line with what you're doing. Do they buy in? Every one of those questions as you go through the process of implementing and building your repair planning will come into play. And it's always easy to quit and just say, this doesn't work. But it does. It really, really does. We had some of our own struggles with it, and we had spoken to the Regiers about it, and they were kind of in that same place at the time where they had changed how they were doing repair planning because it wasn't always working.
Yep. Keep at it.
It will happen. Just keep going, keep getting better, and reach out to Norm, and reach out to Lenny, and reach out to Mark and Todd, and reach out to Bob and Laser Bot. Like, reach out to all the other shops and go visit them and go watch them. When doing that at the body shop, the picture you showed earlier, I worked at that body shop in 97, 98. It was kind of cool to be back there working again like I was when I was a young apprentice. So yeah, just keep at it and believe that it will work, because it will.
Well said, Joel. High five.
High five, brother.
Yeah, yep. I can't add anything to that. That was perfect.
I was gonna say, any of you guys want to follow that one?
I am not even trying to top that. Nope.
Nope. Yep,
not happening.
That was pretty awesome.
Okay, so we'll leave it there. Any thing that anyone listening can throw up in the comments? Obviously, the hopes that people will subscribe and keep following, but more so throw us questions, throw us topics. We look forward to putting things in front of people that might stir up conversation, stir up passion. Never designed to, downplay people's intentions or even shame anything. I'm again humbled by the last podcast that a lot of people reached out going, we need some help. So with that, again, guys, thanks as always for your time, energy, away from your business to help improve this industry, and look forward to the next episode.
It's been a
Sounds
slice.
good.
Thank you, Lenny.
All right.